Hello, everyone. Very good evening to all of you, and a warm welcome to all of you who have joined for this masterclass today. We are super thrilled to have Mr. Sunil Joshi and Dr. Venkata Kumar to give the masterclass on open BIM practices and global BIM standards. Before we start the session, I would like to give a small introduction about Dr. Venkata and Sunil Joshi. Dr. Venkata works as an associate professor at IIT Bombay, specializing in construction technology and management. His work focuses primarily on the dynamics of information on construction projects, particularly the management effects on project delivery and the application of AI ML in construction safety and contracts. Sunil Joshi is a digital transformation leader with 20 years of experience in the industry, driving changes for SMEs. Sunil has led BIM strategies, methodologies, and collaborative design teams across India, UK, USA, Australia, and the Middle East. He brings a holistic cross market experience and view on achieving true construction magic where data, process, and people align. So we have two industry veterans today. One, Dr. Venkata, who is more from the academic background, and Dr. Sunil Joshi from the industry background. I am really hoping this session would be very insightful for all the attendees today. And for all the attendees, you would not be able to unmute your mic at this point, but the Q&A option is available for you. So you can always, if whenever you have any questions, you can always raise your questions on the Q&A section. Our team will help you with the questions. And if we feel that question is very interesting, we will take it up for the panel discussion as well. Okay. Over to you, Dr. Venkata. You can start with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll try to share my screen now, Rohit. Let
Sure.
me know if you can see the screen properly. I just wanted to show my face to everybody. Usually a masterclass is much easier when you have people in the audience. Right now, I'm kind of talking to a screen, but then I see a small number on my screen where it says it's around 356 participants. So that's amazing number. And thank you, Rohit and Technostruct, for arranging this masterclass to such a large number of audience. And this is for sure, going to be a very impactful session. I hope I am clear in my audio, my audible.
Yes, yes, you're very clear.
Excellent. So I'm seeing a few raised hands. I think you can take care of them.
Sure, sure. We
Uh,
will do it. You can continue with the session. So I will just, before we start, I'll just give a brief idea.
mhm.
So Dr. Venkata will be talking, giving an OpenBIM masterclass, okay, on OpenBIM and ISO 19650. And then Mr. Sunil Joshi will share his insights on how OpenBIM and ISO 19650 principles are implemented from the industry point of view. Okay, once these two sessions are over, we will open up for the Q&A session.
Excellent. Thank you. So that makes my job easier,
Yes.
and welcome all for the masterclass. Forgive my voice and a bit because I'm kind of still down with some fever, but hopefully I am clear enough for all of you.
You are
Uh,
crystal clear.
yeah, thank you. I would say good morning, afternoon, evening, with wherever part of the world you are in. In the next 30 minutes or so, I will try to cover a few aspects. This would take a long time, but in 30 minutes, let me focus on a few real aspects, especially surrounding interoperability and what is it means by management of information. In fact, I am trying to understand if we can rename BIM as not building information modeling, but building information management. So that is what we are trying to look at, and how do model-based exchange in versus the drawing-based exchanges tend to work on projects. So these are the major things. In doing so, what we will do is we'll focus on four open standards. Um, we call them the industry foundation classes, or IFC, what you see on this slide. We also will focus, I'll give you introduction, of course, so we'll not go in depth in any of these things. We'll also look at what we call BCF, the collaborating format. We'll also talk about IDS a little bit. And the final thing is the Building Smart Data Dictionary, which is called bSDD. And we connect them to the information management framework. So that is the biggest component, and that framework is defined in what we call the ISO 19650. The goal is very simple. By the end, you should be able to explain how teams exchange models reliably, track issues, and validate information requirements across different software. This is the simple thing which I wanted to cover in the 30 minutes. So it's a, when I say simple thing, it is simple for me to tell you, but then it might become the most complicated thing on building projects. So let me go and start off this thing. Now, why OpenBIM? So this is the first question which I think we should answer before we go. Let us start with the reality of our projects today. No team will use one tool. Every
Right.
team, architects, structural engineers, MEP, contractors, owners, often they have very different authoring and review platforms. I'm not going to name any of the vendors, providers, software names, but take anything even for architecture, they will use a different software. Then the structural designers would use a different software. So there are a different number of platforms, and of course, then you might have already logged into, any of these softwares because of your licensing issues. So now the major point for us to, kind of deliver the project on time is that if information is locked inside any of these in one of these vendor formats, then collaboration will become fragile. That is the major problem. So we need to have a vendor neutral exchange that reduces this lock-in risk. And that is where OpenBIM comes in, which reduces that risk by using this vendor neutral exchange. And it supports what we call auditability. That means you can go back and see what is happening, and it helps you in long term handover, because what will happen is buildings and infrastructure last far longer than any single software version. So that software may not also be available, maybe 10 years from now. Okay, I hope my audio is clear, right?
Yes, yes, very clear.
Yeah, okay. So the key idea is this. If I can summarize this slide, interoperability is engineering through standards plus requirements. It's not exporting a file. Essentially, it's a process which we are defining, and that's where OpenBIM becomes very, very important. Okay. So this is what we want to understand. So if I just move on, what does it include? This is what very important for us. Um, Before I do that, I just want to come back to this, right? So one of the key messages today is a model is valuable only when information is trusted and structured. This is the final thing which I forgot to tell you. If properties are missing, naming is inconsistent, let's say, or coordinates are wrong, the model looks very impressive. You will see all the fancy colors, the renderings and all, but it will fail in for your project needs. It will fail for coordination. Quantities will not come properly. You can't really hand over this for facilities management. So it's not just exporting the file. That is what I want to say. This is making information exchange between various parties repeatable and verifiable. So if you want to go back and see what has been exchanged, it has to be verifiable and exchangeable. And that is what we are talking about when we talk about OpenBIM. So what is OpenBIM by the way? Okay. This is what it means. Okay. It's not another software or a platform. It's a synchronized way in which you deal with different tools. Okay. So essentially you are looking at it's as an ecosystem. It's not a platform, it's an ecosystem. Think OpenBIM as an ecosystem. So I've just put some taglines so that you can remember that. And what is done in that? It will take care of the exchange of information. It will have a way in which issues are resolved. It will have a way in which the requirements are captured and the meaning is consistent across all different stakeholders of a project. That is the idea of OpenBIM as an ecosystem. So, how will we do that? For exchange, we have a platform called IFC. So, what will happen? OpenBIM collaboration is via open and neutral standards. IFC is for exchanging model and data. BCF is the collaboration format, which will be for exchanging your issues on models so that you can coordinate without emailing huge files. You can't say, okay, please find attached, and somebody will come back and say, no, no, please do it on WeTransfer or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay. So that is what the exchange means. Okay. And IDS is for making requirements machine readable. So essentially, if I want to check whatever is exchanged on the IFC model, which I gave you, IDS will actually define what is needed and whether it has come out not. For example, if I say that all IFC doors need to have an attribute which says fire rating, and let's say if you give me a format where the door rating, fire rating is not part of the IFC model which you gave me, then I can come back to you and say, sorry, this is not happening. Okay.
Mhm.
Similarly, the bSDD is about the consistent definitions. So that's the data dictionary. For example, when we say fire rating, load bearing, everybody has to interpret what that means correctly. So that is what bSDD will tell us. So these are the four things which are very, very important when it comes to OpenBIM. So let me give you the workflow at a glance. When we are talking about OpenBIM workflow, this is what we exactly mean. Okay. You will define requirements. This is where your ISO 19650 will give you. Okay. Um, we have all these AAR, EIR, many different terms which actually help you in defining those requirements. Then you author in your own native tools. Okay, whatever tool you have, you author that, you model your thing, you generate your models, very nice. Then you exchange only through IFC. Okay, it's an interoperable format. You review it using BCF and validate the deliverables using your IDS. Okay, and maintain the consistent terminology using bSDD. So keep this pipeline in mind because almost every project is a break somewhere in this chain. Any project you take now which says which claims we are implementing BIM will break anywhere in somewhere here. Either they don't define the requirements, there might be a very nice clause in the contract says BIM should be used on this project without defining what it means. Okay, that means the first part is gone. Or you will see that you will define which native tools have to be used, but then you don't really look at review processes and how do you maintain consistent terminology. So that's all this. Now, the bridge of all these things is the ISO 19650. It tells how the information should be managed. So it will tell you the roles, responsibilities, deliverables, approvals, and common data environment. So that's very, very important. And the OpenBIM formats are the technical mechanisms that make this management practical. Okay, so they are they actually operationalize what is happening, what is being envisaged by ISO 19650. So essentially, while ISO 19650 tells you how to do it, the OpenBIM formats will tell you what you
Mhm.
exchange, how you review, and how you check quality. So this is what it is. Okay, if the requirements are unclear, no file format, whatever format you will use, will save the project. This is very, very important. I am coming from a very practical perspective of using BIM on things. Of course, Sunil will tell you a lot of things about what happens on things. Okay, so in a sense, let me just now come to the exchange formats. Okay, so you'll see that I am kind of looking at these things in a much broader fashion now. So if you look at IFC in one slide, sorry about it. Okay, it's not a 3D file. Okay,
Mhm.
it's not a file format. It's a structured data schema. That means that it's a hierarchy of relationships and properties along with geometry, which is a model in itself. Okay, it's not 3D, it's not 4D, all those things. It's a data scheme. It's not a file format. Okay, it will enable cooperation, and it is published now in ISO. So if you have to look at this, it's the ISO 16739 family that will define your industry foundation classes, and it's an open standard for exchange of BIM information. Okay, I'm just rushing through. I hope there will be a lot of questions later on which I can answer because I'll also have to give Sunil what are the practical problems. Uh,
Yes.
and just Rohit, you can also give me a little bit on the time as well whenever you.
No, no, don't worry. We have enough time.
Yeah. So how is IFC structured? Okay, so what you will see is that then there can be many different ways. Okay, you can exchange this IFC as an XML, which is like the extended markup language. So you will see the something like your HTML. If you go to a web page and say view code, view source code, what will
Yeah.
happen? Similar kind of a thing, or you can have different ways, but the way it is structured is this, so whatever you see here, it's a hierarchy of objects. So you'll have things defined like IFC wall, IFC slab, IFC door, space, etc. Then there are relationships. So it says that, for example, a door is contained in a wall. Okay. Or you say that these four walls aggregate into a space. Okay. So there are different ways, or you can say, okay, this wall and this slab are connected. So it will
Right.
have these relationships like containment, aggregation, and connections. Okay. So there will be
Yes.
some properties like that. Okay. And all of them will come into what we call P sets, which are property sets. And then, of course, there will be quantifications and classifications. Now, there will be a global geometry. I know I'm rushing through. Okay. But uh, I am aware that all of you know some idea about BIM modeling. So this is
Yes.
kind of a mapping from the normal modeling tool, whatever you see, whatever authoring tool you have, to how it will map to your IFC context. Okay. So finally, what will happen is you are taking out the native file format out of your modeling and you export into this, which is like a standard set of informations which I require to actually execute this project. And that's the information which you share across projects. Okay.
Right.
So there are a number of versions you will encounter. So right now the major extension is 4.3, which is going on. The issue is IFC is also evolving. Okay, IFC 5 might very come, which is a
There
huge
is one.
update which will come probably in the next year or so. So whenever you are creating, we'll come to EIR and BEP in a moment, but you understand that you have to version it out properly so that people have a consistent definition across. So this
Right.
is one key thing which all of you have to understand. Now, if we come to uh, this,
Mm.
once the IFC is defined, exchange means you need not export everything. Okay. This is another major thing which all of us have to understand. You have to export only whatever is required and whatever is in the scope of the other person who is receiving it. So you can't exchange the entire information what is there. You have to kind of think about, um, what is the uh, what is the scope with which that person is entitled to look at in your sync. Also, you have to look at whether any ambiguities are there in the model, etc. And you have to specify the level of information which is required for the other person. So this and all should be captured in what we call a BIM execution plan. And you have to deliver this exchange only based on that BIM execution plan. That is the most important thing, which I would like to tell you, because now that you have a IFC format, it doesn't mean that you exchange whatever you want to. That is my whole idea of this. Okay. A good exchange defines the purpose and scope, what objects, whatever something, and you may without that you have to exchange massive files that still do not
Right.
support any decision making. Okay, so that is why it had to be very careful, and that is where the IDS will become very powerful. This is what we call, it's a machine checkable information requirement. Okay. IDS is what we call information delivery specification. What it does, it lets us express requirements in a way that can be checked automatically. Okay, I'll give you an example here, right? As I said earlier also, this IDS is an evolving thing with Building Smart, which you can also look at. There is an IDS page on the Building Smart International website. For example, this is what it is. All doors must have a fire rating. This is a human readable, but it's also machine checkable. Okay, because it has very standard terms, all must have, etc. Similarly, all IFC spaces, which is essentially an object in IFC, must have a classification code and an area, which will be helpful for you to check some compliance later on. Okay. Now, what will happen is it will turn your vague text into a very testable rule.
Right.
That is why it is there. So this IDS is essentially what you see if you see the bottom. It will turn. the EIR, the employer information requirements, or the building execution plan, which you do as part of your 19650, into an automated checking part. So you have to do this before you move forward. Okay. In a mature workflow, sorry, IDC becomes the quality assurance gate. Okay. So
Right.
it'll tell you whether whatever you are sharing is passing that quality criteria or not. Now, once you share this information, then what you do is the collaboration part. So that is the BIM collaboration format. What it will do is it will not exchange models, but it will exchange issues across tools. Okay. So essentially, you can think BCF as a thread of issues. What is the thread? Whether you know you can take a snapshot. Okay, you can put your own viewpoint. Okay, without sending the full models back and forth. See, you can't say, okay, see, this is my, see, this happens in CAD files also. You send your CAD file, that
Right.
file will put a annotation on top of it and say, see, this is a problem. Can you rectify that? Steps are going into the wall, not into the door, whatever it is, they will tell that. But now the entire CAD file, now the entire BIM model has to be reverted back. Now that becomes a huge problem. Instead of that, BCF helps you to exactly point out what are the problems, etc. It will reference your IFC elements with IDs. So what will happen when you send this mapping, that automatically gets rendered on top of the IFC elements on the other side. So that will reduce the information to and fro, which will practically, you have to use BCF for the clashes. That is what is important.
Right.
And you have to review nodes, missing properties, and finally that will help you to manage your review cycle properly. Now, in order to do this, the final bit of the puzzle is what is a consistent meaning, and that is where bSDD will come. So bSDD is the Building Smart Data Dictionary. Um, this interoperability, you can share the same models, etc. But if I read my data differently from you, because my meaning about something is very different from you, fire rating, if you say 3 hours, for me 3 hours might be very different, because I feel that 3 hours could be because from the start of the fire to the
Right.
complete thing, uh, complete destruction of the door, whereas for you that meaning would be very different. So that is why the bsdd will help to make that consistently understood. So these are the four parts. Okay, now let us come, how do I put all these things? What is the framework in that? That is where IS 19650 comes into picture. It is the standard for information management to use BIM. It will define your roles, it will define your information. So IS and it will define your workflows. So it is the international framework for information management using BIM. Okay. And there are some very important key parts, as you can see, which will define all these portions for you. Okay, so it has that in that, and the final part is what we call the security, where you also have to be careful about your data.
Correct.
So if you look at it, the core concepts, okay, if you look at it, at the core is the role and accountability. So what you will see, the major portion is to define who is the employer or who is the client, which is the appointing party, who is the contractor who is doing the information, which is the appointed party, and of course there is a general information contractor whom we call the lead appointed party. So this is the core concept. Okay. Then we have EIR, which is the employer's information requirements, based on which each team will commit how they will deliver. That is what we call a BIM execution plan. So
Correct.
employer requirement will be given in the contract. Then people will promise, okay, based on that requirement, this is our plan to deliver them. And how do I know is what we call a common data environment, which is a single source of truth for your information. So a useful model which you have to keep in mind is the one on your right. Okay. So there would be usually stages in which any model or any data truth which is accepted here, that there is a work in progress, then it's shared to the one. And this is where you are, I don't know if you came across this framework called RICA framework.
Yes.
who is responsible, who is information, and all that will come. It's shared. Someone has to accept it. Once it is accepted, it's published, and there later on it will be archived. Okay, so information containers move through these control states, and it's not via ad hoc email sharing. So you can't say, okay, can you approve this model, and say, okay, the model which you have shared on email is approved. Then you have to go back, the email attachment won't open later on. All these kinds of things are there. There's a single source of truth, which is called common data environment. So let me, sorry, map this ISO process to the OpenBIM formats. Um, so this is the synthesis of the entire thing. Okay, so ISO 19650 processes map naturally to the OpenBIM formats. If you look at it, the requirements which are captured in EIP BEP can be expressed and tested using IDS.
Ideas.
So what will you do? You will create IDS based on your EIR and BEP. Then delivery exchanges are commonly delivered through IFC.
IFC.
Reviews and closures of decisions are done and tracked through BCF. And of course, the properties are maintained by bSDD. Okay. So the big message is this. The ISO 19650 tells you how, who does, and how information is controlled. The open bin formats are your technical tools, how we exchange data, track issues, and verify requirements. Together, they create a repeatable, auditable, and BIM workflow. So this is how you have to understand the whole idea of open BIM using ISO 19650. If you understand this, the whole point now from here on, after this masterclass, is to go and see the ISO 19650 through the lens of your framework and OpenBIM formats from the technical tools which will enable you to manage through ISO 19650. Okay. I
Yes.
will, I wanted to give you an exercise. Okay. This is what I normally do for an audience who are there, but this is something for a mental map for all of you to go ahead and see when you take away from this lecture. Okay. Imagine this. Okay. So there is a hospital outpatient building or something which you want to build using a coordinated exchange of information. Okay. You can look at it in groups of your thing after the master class, but I would strongly suggest you to try to look at this. Okay. So you define one IFC exchange. What does that mean? Um, you define who would send what model to whom and when. This is what is required. Okay, that is your BEP also. So essentially, you can define, if I just have to put that in, you can define the architect will send, okay, 80% ready BIM model to structural consultant by T plus 3 months. Okay, so this is one definition. Okay, so you can think of these kinds of definitions. Then you propose one, maybe about five IDS rules. Okay, you can think of, like, what are the spaces. So you can say all IFC spaces need something. Okay, or all IFC doors, as I said, fire rating is one, but you can think of many things. All IFC doors should have, handicap friendly or persons with disability friendly handle to open. So all these kinds of things you have to kind of think of. And again, look at three BCF issues, like how is a clash handled in BCF, missing properties, how are they handled, wrong classification, how the, this would be a good exercise for you. You can take a group of five or something and do this, and that will help you to digest the lot of information which I crammed in about the last 20-30 minutes. Okay. So that's more or less about it. I just want to just take a little bit on common pitfalls you will see. um, just don't say that if I define that IFC is exported, then my
Uh,
interoperability is no, that's wrong. Okay, property naming, there is always a problem. Be very careful on naming. ISO 19650 gives a very standard way to define things, files, and containers. Just follow some of these points meticulously, and I can share these slides later on to Rohit, which can be
yes.
shared to everyone. That should be fine with it. Now, some practical checklists, which I think Sunil will talk a little bit more, is agree on certain things before you do anything. Okay, especially some of these what I have listed down here. You also have to define, what is how it will happen. You have to implement some things meticulously, like you are, enforcing your CDE, enforcing the naming conventions. In fact, if you take certain vendors CDEs, the folders have the constraints which we say if this naming convention is not followed, you can't upload to the folder. So these
Right.
kinds of things you have to be careful, and then you have to always use validating using IDS, and of course you track your review. Okay, and you archive them in an accepted format, in an accepted deliverable, which can then be used for facilities management. This is very, very important for you. Okay, so if you want to just remember one thing, um, okay, interoperability is not a software feature. Okay, it's a project system. Standards help, but only when teams define scope, they enforce workflows, and they check deliverables consistently. This is very, very important. So if you forget everything about this, remember this one thing, okay? That, if somebody says we are interoperable, that's great, okay? But that's not the thing. Interoperability is a system in a project. You have to enforce it, and you have to make use of this, all these things. And once you enforce only these things, then you can say your project is truly interoperable and it is ready for collaboration. So to wrap it up, this is the final thought which I would like all of you to take up. OpenBIM gives us open standards for exchange, issues, requirements, and semantics. Okay, IFC, IDS, BCF, BSDD work together. Okay, if you want to really explore the true potential of OpenBIM, you have to make them work together. And the underlying platform to do these things is the ISO 19650, which will provide the governance framework via these rules and CDE workflows. This is very important. So, successful BIM, and I am telling you where my M is not modeling but management. Successful management of your information, whether it is for building or whether it is for construction, infra, whatever it is for you to have clarity in what you need, what needs to be exchanged, and consistency in terms of maintaining your CDE workflows properly, naming standards properly, and having very structured collaborative mechanisms, including BCF and ISO 19650 frameworks. So that for me is successful BIM collaboration. So with that, I think I will stop here and I'm open for questions. I give it back to Rohit.
Yes.
Can take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sunil. Hi.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good
And
evening.
thanks, Venkata, for setting the tone. So, anything that comes to standards or probably getting more deeper into 19650, I think Venkata will jump in here. That's one of his favorite subjects as well. So we'll leave that to him. Rohit told me that, I should be there in the call and probably share more insights from a practitioner's perspective and, give relevant examples. So today, as we are talking, I would rather spend more time in giving more industry specific examples. And if you have any questions that comes to your mind, like you've heard now, Venkata talked about formats, talked about different things. But when you go back and if you're an architect and if you to start your work, what are the thoughts that comes to your mind and how you want to start that? So I'd rather keep it more interactive and keep the presentation component very short.
Sure,
I
sure,
hope
sure.
that's okay.
Definitely. Definitely, yes.
You can see my screen.
Not yet. Yes, we can.
Okay, just give me a moment. Yeah. So this is a slide that I generally use always when we talk about standards and power of standards, because people think about standard, then they are not able to relate the importance or the significance of that. And this is a very simple example. People may be here from different backgrounds, but this was one decision that was taken by the European Union to standardize the charging point. The the typical chargers that you use, and they said we'll all move to C-type chargers. That one decision now, which is already rolled out and under implementation right now, it's saving more than 11,000 metric tons of electronic waste every year. Now, from a software perspective, what Venkata was just giving, so okay, I'll come to this later, but give an example. I'll tell you, I was working on a plant in Australia. It was an industrial project, and that was shipped from one portion, somewhere close to China, and they were moving some portion of the plant. And making that as an integral part of a different larger setup in Australia. And to do the integration, we needed the digital data, the drawings, and the models. And at that point of time, the information formats which were available, those were not usable. So if you are familiar with one or two or three different types of information formats or model formats, you have to keep changing them from version to version. So Venkat,
Right.
he talked about IFC file, industry foundation class. Now that's one format which is like from a longevity perspective, it is something that secures your risks of not being able to use that information. Now imagine large plants, you have put thousands of hours, lakhs of hours sometimes to produce the data, and if those data is not usable after few years, it becomes very difficult. So that's where the information risks and standards has a huge potential, and the owner community, specifically the government, the overall, administration is one of the major beneficiary. Why, they feel that it's going to speed up and bring a lot of standardization. Like a simple example, file naming Venkata spoke about. Now, if you just look at file naming, we were on one project. The client wanted to create a dashboard for all the documents which is there in their kind of data environment, more than 1 lakh of drawings, and they wanted to generate a dashboard for that. We had two types of environment. One environment which was using 19650 or equivalent standardized naming convention, which means that your architects, structural consultants, MEP consultants, your engineers, contractors, everybody is using the same parameters of information, and you have a consistent naming parameters. Now you're able to identify the files and create a meaningful insights out of that very effectively. On the other side, you have varying parameter. People try to put dates and other things on the files. Version controls are not being affected. So it
Right.
brings a lot of inefficiency. Now, there is no rocket science. If somebody will come and say that, oh, file naming is so easy. File naming is not the difficult part of it. It's about making everyone in the project to follow the same naming convention and everyone aligning to the same naming convention with the same discipline. That's a bigger challenge. And trust me, if you feel this is a very easy thing, no, when we work with people, habits are very different. You will still go and save the file with your name underscore Sunil underscore
Hmm.
24, the date
Date.
or
Yeah.
you will do something there. And the digital transformation, most of the time, requires a lot of discipline after technology and processes. Now with AI, it's making a lot of things very easy. I'll have some interesting examples of AI also just as a use case, because Rohit told me I should use pictures, because he said, "When you don't use pictures, or you use pictures for your slides." So I said, I'll try to use as much as I can.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about 19650, Venkata has already covered the standard. I'm just limiting that. I'm going to talk probably, or the context of discussions will keep it limited to part two. There are six parts of the standards. The part one is concept and principle. Part two talks about the delivery phase of assets. Now, if somebody is not familiar to this terminology, asset is anything like if you call buildings, bridges, plants, any project that is there in the operation stage or whatever you are building, it's an asset. And then the operation phase of the assets, then you have information exchange protocol, which defines how you're going to exchange information. Then you have security aspects, which is 19650 Series 5. And the last one is health and safety information. So this is a huge series, and it works in conjunction. Like you have to also follow the project management principles, other design principles, and then this focus specifically on information management. Now, this is where, most of the time, specifically with Indian community, we get into a little bit of a confusion, or probably that terminology has not synced in well. So whenever we say information management, everything in the project is an information. If you're asking for a drawing, it's an information. If you're giving a design brief, it's an information. If you're asking for a report, it's an information. If you're giving something for submission to government officers as a compliance drawing, submission drawings, those are information. If you're asking for a cost data, that is information. So information now is, that's where we are now trying to talk about a very vast, wide scale. And most of the time, people when they talk about BIM, they feel that it's essentially about 3D models or managing model related data. No, when we talk about 19650 and BIM management process that 19650 governs, we are essentially talking about all types of information, every single information that helps us build the product, build the asset, and then deliver those assets. Uh, and from an India perspective, it is a very important. Venkata talked about IFC. He talked about BCF. He talked about exchange formats and all. Now, the important thing, just to kind of add to what he said, it's about the continuity of the information. Today, the major challenge that we have in the industry today is architect starts the projects and he does the project in one software. Then there is
Correct.
an engineering team that they come, they look at that information again, whether it is in one or another format, they start recreating that again. Then there is a construction team that comes on board and they start creating the information again. And then when the operation team comes on board, they start again the same process where there is lack of continuity. And this is one of the bigger problems from a workflow perspective. And what we call it beautifully as golden thread. If we are able to establish that connectivity of information from the beginning of the project till the end of the project, then it is something that is going to bring tremendous amount of efficiency, and it is going to make the whole workflow very efficient, because one is the activity efficiency. For example, if you're using some kind of a cloud data environment systems, or if you're using a cloud based drawing register system, if you're using some kind of a automation system, that brings a point efficiency is something that you are realizing on that specific tasks. But when you talk about the workflow efficiency, it is the efficiency that you are generating out of connecting and creating a seamless flow of information between different tasks, different stages, different activities. In ISO 19650, or specifically the BIM standard terms, when the delivery, the capital assets in the build stage, we call it project information model. The moment it is getting converted into your asset, we call it asset information model. And what it says is, in most of the projects, we have always been talked about, okay, what do you want to build, and let's get started. And the process starts from somebody wanting to build. But in most of these cases, the line philosophy is that the user feedback, asset information requirement, the requirement of the owners. Like, for example, imagine today developers are building so many real estate projects, and they are building one project. There is a problem in that project which they have reported to the municipal governments, or they have kind of some customers there. They are going to another custom project. Again, those learnings are not established here. The citizen feedback are not going back there. Now, from a government perspective, now when the government deploy this kind of a system, if you have a problem with one bridge, there is a learning, it goes back. So when you want to build another bridge, there is a learning mechanism, the user feedback has gone back, and now that forms up your requirement, asset information requirement, that okay, what are the things that we should be doing, how should we consuming the asset, what are the learnings of the asset during the performance stage. I'm very glad to say, one of the leading developers we work with in Pune, who manage the city as well. And what they have done is, they are collecting the feedback from their own city, because it's a private 500-acre city. They collect the feedback. Now, what they're doing is, they have this township, they have users coming in, they're collecting the feedback. The feedback is then accumulated and it is going on to the design board again. Now, this becomes, and this is the process which actually kind of lays a very strong foundation for creating a beautiful design, for creating well engineered products, which is actually passed the test of time, and all those feedback has come back. Okay.
Yes.
To sum it up, now people talk about, most of the time there is a confusion. There is a lot of things, sometimes we talk about little
Mm.
technical terminologies and it becomes difficult. So I will make it very simple. Very simple. If you go back today and somebody asks you what ISO 19650 is going to help you with, and then if I go to my previous slide, if you look at this slide, and Venkata was talking about appointing party, appointed party. So I don't know if you were able to relate it, so I'll just try to elaborate from a use case perspective and maybe come back to this slide. So this is just elaborating on what Venkata just mentioned
Mhm.
about the person who is the lead kind of sponsor of the project. Somebody who is like, if it's a hospital owner who is building up the project, if it's a government for which the road project or a rail project has been built, so they are the main appointing party. They have specifications that they write, and ultimately they are the ones who are getting the built assets. They're getting all the information related to the built asset, and the information related to the built asset is also very important along with the physical asset, because you're going to use that to create your digital twin, to create your operational frameworks, and anything that you want to do with that project. Later on, if you want to do expansion, how do you do that if you don't have the digital equivalent? The same thing now, the lead appointed party are the ones who are aggregated, supply partners to the client, to the owner, who have certain lead responsibility, and they also manage a portion of the supply chain members. And then the appointed party are the ones who are respectively, kind of given a responsibility in the project, and they are appointed for specific roles like civil design, structural engineers. So they are all the appointed parties. Now, in our simple terms, there is a client who is procuring the project. There are suppliers, architects, designers, they can all be called as appointed party, and there is a rule that governs all of them. Now, when you come here, okay, and when you are in the beginning of the project, now, how does ISO 19650 relate to an architect? Now, from an architect perspective, architect or in an engineering company perspective, he will have to follow basics, very basics, naming conventions. So, if the client has given a naming convention, that is the requirement of the appointing party. Now, architect has to gear up and be ready to align with that requirement and have a system in place to follow that and make sure that the naming conventions are correct. There will be roles and responsibility clarity documentation. So I'll come to this one. So specifically, look at these three words: procurement, exchange, and management. When you are procuring, whether you're procuring design, whether you're procuring materials, whether you're procuring constructions, operations, any of the supplier, the information that you demand, the formats of those information, the way in which you want them to give you that information, the way in which their deliverable scopes are defined, that is all governed in terms of the procurement specification. The second one is exchange. When they are in the design phase, how do you want them to exchange the information? When they are in the exchange, probably when they are getting into the operation stage, how do you want them to exchange the information? How they should exchange the information with the client? Like Venkata, spoke in one of the slide, that if you're working on a model and client wants to take a decision, so he just need two drawings. He doesn't need the whole model. So
Right.
whenever you need to bring that data drop, in BIM language, we call it data drop. So whenever you need to bring the data drops out, you take that, and from that you create your exchange requirements or based on the specification that has been given. The last one is management. What is management? Management means management of your scope. Who is going to do what? Who is going to make the models for architecture, for walls? Who is going to do the design? Who is going to be responsible for delivery of particular drawings? And in management, it goes down to an extent where we create very specific drawings. In our traditional language, we call deliverable list, which has been now enhanced, and we call it MIDP, Master Information Deliverable Plan, which means that there is a specified list of deliverables that each of the appointed party has to submit, saying that these are the documentation that I'm going to submit, these are the timelines when I'm going to submit, and then further they have to also create TIDP, which is Task Information Deliverable Plan. So if you look from a terminology perspective, sometimes Brits, I don't know if we have too many British here, they do complicate the English. Maybe from our perspective, if I have somebody from US, he could have simplified it, but then
Yeah.
they have put in a lot of efforts. The appreciation must go to the people, because before ISO 19650 was launched in 2018, it almost served a decade of testing with the with the normal UK alliance, which is now NEMA, and working group amongst a lot of my UK friends, who have been there, and they put in a lot of efforts to put the standards, and then it was picked up and bought into becoming one of the ISO standards. And now also we see a lot of efforts from uh, BSI and other people to come here, including Building Smart. We are trying to basically promote and encourage the adoption of ISO 19650, because from a construction perspective, it has, we as an industry has a huge deficit of resources, which means that the amount of delivery that we have to do globally, the amount of targets that we have to achieve, and the resources, when we look back, there is a huge deficit. And then the digitalization, these kind of information management has promising ability to give a lot of efficiency and enhance the process. And that's why we see a lot of question that the government is having today. A lot of private companies, a lot of mega projects are mandating BIM, because they're seeing that benefit, specifically in an environment where the project size is huge, and then the resources, there is a huge deficit of those resources. So I hope from a procurement, exchange management, these three words, you look at the project, anything you can classify it as information. You have to procure that information, means that you're going to get it from a supplier. What is the scope? What is the responsibility? How you're going to exchange it? And the last one is management. If you remember these three, probably you can elaborate and further build on that. This I think we just covered. This is again from a information management process, right from the assessment till project closeout. You have a role for everyone. There is a process that it governs how you are initially kind of establishing and doing the assessment and needs for information. Like if I'm appointing an architect, I have to look at their capability. If I'm appointing a contractor, I have to look at what are the information I need there. Then I have invitation to tender. There is a tendering process where we have to take the information, procure the information, validate that information. You have an appointment and mobilization process. You have a process for collaboration, exchange of information, and ultimately the delivery phase where you're doing the model delivery, and then the project closeout. So if you see, ISO 19650 helps you do the information management in conjunction with existing project management standards and help you deliver the project very effectively. It creates a lot of I think it clears out a lot of clouds from the project. It brings a lot of certainty, it brings a lot of clarity onto decision making, and that's where the quality level of project goes up if you are aligning with 19650. A simple example here, a workflow, like this is a workflow that you have to align. Now naming convention is one I talked about. I will not have all those slides here now, but it just says that if you're working, you must have all the information in the work in progress environment, but the moment you are sharing it, it gets through a gate and then it comes to the shared environment, which means that now you can have all the parties share information, and that shared database or that shared environment is available for everyone's access. Now this is a very simple thing, but I will relate you to one of the problems in BIM, and this was like almost 10 years back. We I think at that point of time, now we do mostly level 2 BIM and BIM management, but there was a lot of emphasis on doing 2D to 3D BIM at that point of time, and we picked up one project, and the architecture structure model was created, the MEP model was created, and they gave us the design, and that whole thing was built up at that point of time. And suddenly there's a lot of clashes. It came up with a lot of clashes. So when we did the root cause analysis, why some silly clashes were there, we realized that the architecture drawings, while there was a problem in mentioning that, was on version 10, and the structure was again on revision 10. So which means that they were aligned. So their clashes were genuine clashes.
Mm.
MEP was on revision 8 of architecture, revision 9 of structure. Now the problems were coming not because there is a problem in the design. The problems were coming because the information that is shared is not shared with everyone. They attach drawing. So if I'm talking to a structural consultant, architect had a meeting, okay, let's change this column. They updated the new drawings. They attach it to the email, sent to the fellow, saying that now you use this. They forgot to mark the other people.
Yeah.
Now, we fail to realize that any information change, even if you're moving a single door, it has a potential to impact almost all the designers. And that is where the common single source of truth comes in. So what standard says is that when you are sharing an information, mera nahi uska nahi. So if people are outside of India, it means that it's not for specific anyone, not for specific any individual. It is for everyone in the project team members that we are sharing. Of course, the rights and the access, their role defines what kind of privilege that they have. That can all be controlled through the governing software. All softwares have those features. But the shared information, if it is relevant and required information for the set of stakeholders, it is shared with all of them together. And ultimately, published information, once it is there in the shared information, we have consumed that information to produce a finer version. Then you decide now it is all approved, and then we want to go and publish. Published information goes for consumption, which means that published information can go for construction, published information could be GFCs, published information can go for procurement, published information can be submitted as an as-built drawings, it can go. So published information means it has an information that is now authorized, that it can be issued for further consumption. So this is a very simple process. And
Yes.
then there's a lot of nonsense and things goes in the project. If you don't need that information, you put it in the archive. Okay, that's the savior. So sometimes you generate a lot of clutter. If it is not being used, you put it in the archive. A simple rule for folders, very difficult to achieve. Okay, very difficult to achieve. But this is what the standard defines. Now, if everybody in the industry aligns with this simple tasks, it makes the project, it makes the whole workflow very efficient.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. I thoroughly enjoyed the session today. It was really insightful, really fun. And yeah, we gained a lot of information today. And I hope you also have enjoyed today's session. This is a small certificate of felicitation for both Sunil and Dr. Venkata. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for joining today. And for the attendees for participation, definitely you would be getting a certification. Apart from that, you can take your first step now towards Building Smart certification. There is a free entry level certification available on Building Smart's website. You can use this link. Okay, you can go inside this link, and from there, if you open it, this test hardly takes 10 to 15 minutes for you to take up. This is the first step towards Building Smart entry level certification. You can create a new account from here. Okay, and then you can fill in all your details regarding your user ID, password, name, so and so. Once that is done, you can click continue, and you can log in with your user ID. And once that is done, you can select, and under available courses you would see the entry level exam. You can click on this. Please select the English format. There are multiple language formats available. You can select the English format, and you will start the you can select the attempt quiz option. It's a 10-minute quiz. Okay, so I would highly encourage all of you to take this. This will give you an understanding and a feel of how the Building Smart Foundation certification is going to be. So this will give you boost your confidence. You have attended this session for good 2 hours now. So let's spend another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I encourage all of you, if you can spend another 10 minutes to take up this test, this will definitely help you with the understanding of OpenBIM and ISO 19650. Since all the thoughts are fresh in our head, you can take up this, and you can finish. Once you have finished with the test, you can download the can go to the profile, and your profile, and from your profile you would be able to download the entry badge, Building Smart entry badge. You can download them. You can post it on post it on your LinkedIn profile, tag Technostruct Academy, and definitely tag Building Smart India as well. We will give a shout out for whoever is tagging. So that will definitely increase your professional visibility as well. So this is your first step. Next step for with Building Smart certification is the foundation level certification. So foundation level certification requirement is that you should have 14-hour learning from a training partner. Okay, Technostruct Academy is one of the training partners for Building Smart Foundation certification. So it's a completely online program that we offer, and we have included that with most of the courses these days. You would be trained, in an online environment about the Building Smart Foundation, whatever is required for the exam. You will be trained on that, and we will be scheduling your exam for foundation level. And upon completing the exam, you will get the Building Smart Foundation badge along with the certificate. Okay, so after the session, I will definitely email you the entry level certification link as well as the guide for you to take. It's completely free, so I encourage all of you to please go to the link and take up that test. It will hardly take you 10 minutes to do it. So once again, thank you to our panelists, and thank you for all the attendees. We had close to 450 attendees at a point, which was really amazing. Thank you everyone for joining in today, and I hope all of you were able to gain enormous amount of information about OpenBIM as well as ISO 1965 today. Thank you again for all of you for listening our masterclass. Keep following Technostruct Academy for such interesting masterclass. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.